control of the central government. We make our own decisions on how to use this money. So can you then prepare consolidated accounts? Does it make sense? So I found the UK model where they use the whole of government accounts in order to overcome this issue of consolidation, defining control and controlling entities. So I think if we are to make this, make government more trusted, then I think we need to change some of this, move away from this private sector. It's a good starting point, but we need to tailor them. I've already talked about revenue recognition. It's a big area where there's a big problem. Like when I was in South Africa, they have, when the budgets are appropriated, and part of that budget is released to the budget agency, and some is not. At the end of the year, you have that unreleased appropriation to be surrendered back to the consolidated fund. Again, you have to show that, disclose that in the financial statement. But countries differ. They said, we don't surrender back what we have not received. So you have all these differences in recognition. The other challenge we have, and I think in many countries you have this classified expenditure. How is it treated? How is it accounted for? How is it made transparent? In many countries, they don't have a law specifically for classified expenditure. Classified expenditure is about national security, defense, and so forth. But we do not have any standard on that. Now, even if we were to adopt the accrual basis of accounting under ASAP, how do you include the assets, military assets? There's no guidance. And in many countries, what I have told them, just treat them as classified expenditure and write it off. Because you don't want to get involved in those discussions. And, but then the tricky problem is on the heritage asset. Yes, there's a guidance on that, but is it appropriate? We now also have an increasing problem at the global level. We have IPSAPs, now we have EPSAPs, we have IFRS. Then you have countries developing their national standards. So, which is the best? More confusion upon confusion. And I think this is where a forum like this is important to move and help countries to go towards convergence of the standards so that they become more relevant and so that the public sector becomes trusted in the financial statements they prepare. Because public finance is about public interest and no more than that. The needs in the public sector, as I said, is about the budget, credibility. I know there's a standard on IPSAS about disclosing budget information. But in the statement of financial performance, this IPSAS says you can present it either by nature of expenditure, that is salary, finance cost, travel. That's by nature of cost. The public sector is not interested in that. Where they are implementing program-based budgeting, they want to see how much money was allocated for this program on HIV, how much was on infrastructure, how much was on health, how much on education, and what is the actual outcome. Or if the standard said you can present it on the basis of functions of government, that is either how much is spent on health, how much is spent on education, how much is held on administration. But the public said, well, I'm not so sure. I know administration is important because if this consumes a lot of resources, then that's a concern. But they're more, the research shows that they are more interested on the programs, service delivery. This is where we need to. The public sector very much puts a lot of attention on compliance. Did the government officials spend the money according to the laws of the country? And how can we provide that information in order to regain trust of the public sector in many of the African countries, the issue about corruption is big. Very few countries in Africa have very low levels of corruption. And that is uppermost in them. And how can we have this financial statement capturing this compliance? Where you see there's this issue about unauthorized expenditure. And I have had that difficult debate with the government. Unauthorized expenditure, what is it? Irregular expenditure, negatory expenditure. Because these are expenses not within the laws. Now, how do you show that? Do you show it on the face of the financial statement of the statement of financial performance, and in the statement of financial position? And how do you disclose that? The normal tradition is to show them under receivables, and it's hidden there. And we say, no, keep them separate so that the public knows that this money was unauthorized and somebody regularly made use of it, so it's receivable. So some of the people. The public wants to know what is sovereign debt. I think based on the experiences in 2007, 2008, now, there, under the IFSAPs, you do not have a statement of public debt. But you can, under the accrual basis, disclose it in the note that this is the sovereign debt. And surprisingly, you meet these public accounts of committee members in Parliament. They say, no, but why don't you give us a full statement of the sovereign debt? You know, there are so many components of public debt. There's the external debt, where African countries borrow from the international community, multilateral financial institutions. Then there's also the domestic debt, where they borrow internally through issuance of treasury bills or bonds or any other financial instruments. There's even a much bigger debt, what we know as the expenditure payment arrears, where government has not paid for goods and services which have been contracted. And in some of these countries, you find that the expenditure payment arrears for the whole country is bigger than the national budget of the country for 1 year or 2 years. So if this is not even captured in the financial statement, so how will people trust the public sector? The other one is contingent liabilities. Governments, the public sector, have hidden huge contingent liabilities, either by way of giving guarantees to the public sector institutions and increasingly to the subnational governments. Because in some countries, the subnational governments, because they have their own council, that's